Chanty was awakened by the sunlight reflecting from her window. She stretched and thought for a moment, then glanced at the clock, 10:15 a.m. She quickly jumped up, exclaiming, "It's already noon?" She couldn't believe she had slept so late. Quickly, she folded her blanket, tidied her bed, and realized she was late for practice with Lewis. She felt embarrassed at the thought of waking up so late. She rushed to the bathroom, took a shower, brushed her teeth, and changed into practice clothes. She put on a tank top and fitted jeans, slipping on leather gloves for practice. She tied up her long hair and checked her appearance in the mirror before grabbing her sword from the bedside table. As she left her room, Lorena greeted her with a smile. "Good morning, Miss Chanty. You woke up late today. You must have been really tired from practice yesterday," Lorena said. "Good morning, Lorena," Chanty replied with a smile, though she thought about staying up all night on an island with Vasper. "Have breakfast, Miss Chanty." "Shall I make you some coffee?" Lorena asked. "Sure, Lorena, thank you," Chanty said as she sat at the table. Lorena brought her breakfast and her favorite cappuccino. "Thank you, Lorena. Where's David? Have they already eaten?" Chanty asked. "Yes, they have, Miss Chanty. You're the only one who hasn't yet," Lorena replied. As Chanty tasted the food, she found it delicious. "The food is so good today, Lorena." "It's always delicious, but today feels special," Chanty remarked. "Ah, yes, Miss Chanty. Sir Jake cooked today," Lorena explained. "Oh, Jake's cooking is amazing," Chanty said with a smile. "Yes, Sir Jake is the best cook among them all, Miss Chanty. He's a student of Laura," Lorena added, referring to David's cook. Chanty smiled at Lorena's words, impressed by Jake's cooking skills. Despite the tasty food, she held back from eating too much because she had practice. She finished her coffee and looked towards the living room, where she saw Lewis swimming in the sea from an open window. She smiled, guessing that Lewis had been waiting for her since their usual practice time was at 6 a.m., and it was now 10 a.m. She walked down to the garden and descended the stone steps to the white sand beach, carrying her sword. As she approached, Lewis saw her and waved with a grin. She smiled back and sat on a large rock facing the sea. Lewis slowly waded out of the water, and she admired the looks and posture of David's friends, all handsome and well-built, each with their own special powers. She was especially impressed with Lewis's telekinesis, which he used skillfully to teach her sword handling. Lewis, wearing only trunks, stepped out of the water and headed to the large rock where his bathrobe lay. He put it on and walked over to her, grinning. "I thought we weren't practicing today since it's already noon," Lewis said with a smile. She laughed at his comment. "Sorry, I woke up late," she said quietly, feeling a bit embarrassed. "No problem. I'll go change and be right back," Lewis replied, and she nodded with a smile. Lewis headed back to the mansion, and she remained there, gazing at the sea. The sun was getting hotter, and she knew she would soon be sweating from their practice. While waiting for Lewis, she practiced with her sword, slicing through the air. When Lewis returned, they began their sword training. As Chanty and Lewis continued their practice, it was clear how dedicated she was to her training. Her grip on the sword was firm and confident, each movement precise and controlled. She moved with the grace of a seasoned warrior, her sword slicing through the air with remarkable ease. Her swordsmanship had become refined, she no longer cut herself or lost her grip on the sword. Lewis watched her with a proud smile. "Ready for some sparring?" he asked, stepping forward. Chanty nodded, her eyes shining with determination. Lewis decided to challenge her by not using his telekinesis, relying only on his physical skills. They took their positions, the beach around them a serene backdrop to their intense practice. The sun glinted off their swords as they clashed. Chanty's movements were fluid and powerful, her strikes swift and deliberate. Lewis blocked her attacks with ease, testing her strength and agility. "Good, Chanty. Keep your focus," Lewis encouraged, parrying a series of quick strikes. Chanty responded with a series of intricate moves, her sword dancing in her hands. She spun, ducked, and lunged, each motion a testament to her growing skill. Lewis countered with equally impressive moves, their swords clashing in a display of strength and precision. The sound of metal against metal echoed across the beach. Chanty's eyes were locked onto Lewis, her focus unwavering. Sweat glistened on her forehead, but she didn't falter. She executed a perfect parry, followed by a swift riposte, pushing Lewis back slightly. "Excellent, Chanty. You've improved so much," Lewis said, genuinely impressed. They continued sparring, their movements almost like a choreographed dance. Each step, each swing of the sword was deliberate, executed with purpose. Chanty's confidence grew with each successful move, her prowess evident in the way she handled the sword. In a daring move, Chanty feinted to the left before delivering a powerful strike from the right. Lewis barely had time to block, a look of surprise crossing his face. They paused for a moment, both breathing heavily, but neither willing to back down. "You're getting faster," Lewis remarked, a proud smile on his face. They resumed their sparring, the intensity of their practice escalating. Chanty's determination was palpable, her every move showcasing her dedication and hard work. Lewis met her attacks with equal fervor, their practice turning into an epic display of skill and determination. The sun continued to rise, casting a golden glow over the beach. The waves crashed softly in the background as Chanty and Lewis fought with fierce determination. Their swords clashed in a final, powerful strike, and they stepped back, both smiling and panting from the exertion. "That was incredible, Chanty," Lewis said, lowering his sword. "You're becoming a true warrior." Chanty nodded, a satisfied smile on her face. "Thanks, Lewis. I couldn't have done it without your guidance." They stood there for a moment, the sun warming their faces, knowing that this practice was a significant step in Chanty's journey to mastery. After their sparring session, the sound of applause broke through the air. Chanty and Lewis turned to see David, Justin, Marco, and Gabriel clapping enthusiastically. They had been standing nearby, unnoticed due to the intense focus Chanty and Lewis had maintained during their practice. Chanty glanced around, looking for Jake, but he wasn't with the others. Her eyes drifted toward the mansion, where she spotted Jake watching from a distance. His face held a satisfied expression, clearly pleased with what he had witnessed. With practice over, both Chanty and Lewis felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Chanty, feeling the hunger from her exertion, returned to the dining area. She eagerly dug into the food, savoring every bite of Jake's delicious cooking. The flavors were rich and comforting, a perfect reward after her hard work. Once her meal was finished, Chanty noticed the absence of the men inside the mansion. It had become a familiar occurrence. David often kept them away from her, allowing interactions only when necessary. She didn't bother asking Lorena about their whereabouts. Instead, she focused on unwinding from the intense practice session. Chanty decided to relax her tired body with a hot bath. She slipped into the warm water, feeling the heat soothe her muscles. The steam rose around her, creating a tranquil and calming atmosphere. She closed her eyes, letting the tension melt away as the water enveloped her. Time seemed to slow down as she enjoyed the soothing bath, her mind drifting peacefully. After a while, she stepped out of the bath, feeling refreshed and rejuvenated. Wrapping herself in a plush towel, she took her time drying off and changing into comfortable clothes. As she left her room, she noticed David waiting for her in the living room. "Chanty," David began with a gentle smile, "we need to visit your vineyard tomorrow to handle the estate and property documents from your father. But first, I have to attend to some matters at my villa." Chanty listened intently, nodding as he spoke. David continued, "We'll make sure everything is taken care of." She appreciated David's organized approach and the care he took in managing her affairs. She knew how important these documents were and felt reassured by his guidance. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the support and friendship that surrounded her, and she looked forward to the challenges and experiences that awaited her. That night, Jake and David left the mansion using Jake's teleportation power, vanishing into the darkness. Chanty, feeling the weight of the day, drifted into a deep sleep. But in the middle of the night, she awoke to a warm, lingering kiss from Vasper. Her heart fluttered as she saw the man she loved deeply, his head bent close to hers as he kissed her tenderly while she lay in bed. Without hesitation, she wrapped her arms around Vasper's neck and returned his kisses. She pulled him closer, causing him to lose his balance and fall on top of her. Vasper smiled at her actions but continued to kiss her, their kisses growing hotter and more intense, fueled by the longing and passion they felt for each other. Chanty, wearing only a silk nightdress without a bra, felt a surge of electricity through her body as Vasper's hands slipped under her dress, caressing her back. Vasper's embrace was tight, full of longing and love. The only words Chanty could utter were his name. "I love you so much, Chanty." Vasper's voice was husky with desire, intensifying her feelings. She lowered the strap of her dress, but Vasper quickly stopped her hands, returning the strap to her shoulder. "Don't tease me, don't torture me," he whispered between kisses, making Chanty smile. In the midst of their heated kisses, Vasper was the first to pull away, still smiling at her. "We need to stop, or I won't be able to control myself," he said, his breath heavy as he kissed her lips again and gently bit them out of sheer desire. "We can't go too far," he added, both of them panting from the effort to restrain their bodies' heat. "I want to be with you for a long time, Chanty," Vasper said, his voice thick with emotion as he struggled to catch his breath. "Put on a jacket, we need to leave. Your friends might sense my presence here, especially Louis. He's second to David in tracking skills. We can't take any chances." Chanty quickly got up and grabbed a long jacket, feeling Vasper's gaze follow her every move. His admiration for her beauty was evident, unable to hide his longing as she moved. Chanty couldn't help but feel the same intense attraction. Vasper looked even more handsome and irresistibly hot in the dim light. How could they restrain themselves when the atmosphere was always charged with such intensity? She slipped on the jacket and moved close to Vasper. Without further delay, he embraced her, and they teleported, disappearing from the room in an instant. They reappeared seconds later on the familiar island they had visited the night before. As they arrived on the island, the moonlight enveloped them in its silvery embrace, casting an enchanting glow on their surroundings. Vasper's hands roamed Chanty's back, igniting sparks with every touch as their kisses deepened in fervor. Overwhelmed by desire, she boldly shed her jacket, letting it drop to the ground, and slipped the straps of her dress down, but the dress not slipping from her hips, revealing her tantalizing form in the shimmering moonlight. Vasper's breath caught in his throat as he beheld her, his eyes aflame with love and longing. Their kisses grew more urgent, each touch sending electric currents through their bodies. With trembling hands, Vasper cupped her breasts, his warm mouth finding her sensitive skin with a hunger born of restraint and devotion. Chanty responded fervently, her every moan a testament to their shared yearning. She arched into his touch, her body pressing closer to his, every nerve alight with desire. "Vasper," she whispered against his lips, her voice trembling with need. He responded with a low groan, his hands moving to cup her breasts more firmly, his thumbs brushing over her sensitive nipples. Chanty gasped, her back arching as she surrendered to the sensations, the cool night air mixing with the heat of their passion. Despite the overwhelming desire between them, Vasper's mind raced with the knowledge of the consequences. He knew he had to stop, but it was becoming increasingly difficult with each passing second. The urgency of their kisses, the heat of their bodies, and the undeniable connection they shared made it almost impossible to pull away. Summoning every ounce of willpower, Vasper lifted Chanty into his arms and carried her toward the water. She clung to him, their lips still locked in a heated kiss. As they entered the cool waves, the sudden chill shocked them back to reality. But even in the water, the intensity of their passion did not wane. Vasper's mouth found her breasts again, his tongue tracing circles around her nipples before he took them into his mouth, one at a time, suckling gently but with fervent intensity. Chanty moaned, her fingers tangling in his hair, pulling him closer as her body responded to his every touch. The water lapped around them, adding an element of tantalizing contrast to the heat they shared. Vasper's hands roamed over Chanty's back and hips, pulling her against him as their kisses grew deeper, more fervent. Each touch, each caress, was a declaration of their love and the desire that pulsed between them. Finally, Vasper forced himself to break the kiss, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He gently pulled the straps of her dress back onto her shoulders and brushed a wet strand of hair from her face, his touch tender. Chanty, if you lose your virginity, you won't be able to wield the sword of destiny, he said softly, but, breathing heavily from the intense sensations he's fighting from within, his voice filled with emotion. It's the only thing that can defeat my father. We can't let our desire jeopardize everything we've fought for. Chanty nodded with open mouth while catching her breathe like him, her heart heavy with the weight of his words. While fighting the fervent heat of her body's sensations, Vasper continued, his eyes never leaving hers. If my father gets to you first, he'll use your blood to gain immortality. His dream of ruling the world will come true, and no one will be able to stop him. Tears welled up in Chanty's eyes, not from sadness, but from the sheer intensity of her love for him. I understand, she whispered, her voice steady despite the emotions swirling within her. We'll be strong, Vasper. We'll fight for our future together. Vasper's eyes softened as he cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs gently brushing away her tears. I love you so much, Chanty, he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. But we have to be patient. We have to see this through. Their lips met again in a tender, lingering kiss, the cool water around them serving as a reminder of the reality they faced. But in that moment, they were just two souls deeply in love, finding solace and strength in each other. After a while, they emerged from the water, their clothes clinging to their bodies. Vasper found Chanty's jacket on the sand, and with a tender gesture, he wrapped it around her shoulders, shielding her from the night air. They found a secluded spot on the beach, the sand cool and soft beneath them. Vasper wrapped his arms around her, holding her close as they watched the moonlight dance on the waves. We'll get through this, Vasper said, his voice filled with determination. We'll complete your mission, and then we'll have the life we dream of. Chanty nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose and love. I believe in us, she whispered, her fingers tracing the lines of his face. We'll have our forever. Chanty nestled closer, her head resting on his chest. I believe in us, Vasper. Together, we can overcome anything. Their lips met in a tender, lingering kiss, each touch a promise of the future they would fight to build. They sat there for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms, finding comfort and strength in their love and the promise of a future together. The night stretched on, filled with their whispered words and the gentle sound of the waves. Vasper turned to Chanty, his expression serious despite the lingering warmth of their embrace. Tonight, we should practice your swordsmanship, that's the plan, he said with a smile, his voice soft yet determined. I saw your training with Lewis today. I was there, but I used an invisible shield so David and the rest wouldn't sense my presence. I saw that you're very skilled with a sword, and of course Lewis is a good teacher, he added. Chanty stunned from Vasper's words, she listened intently, her eyes locked onto his. I want to help you improve your skills, Vasper continued. We'll train with a blindfold. You'll need to rely only on your hearing and instincts. But as she looked at their soaked clothes and felt the cool night air on her skin, she knew it wasn't practical. We're both drenched, he said, a small smile playing on his lips. You might catch a cold if we stay out here. His resolve softening. Let's get you back to Jake's mansion so you can change. We'll continue our training when the moon is full again. He helped her to her feet, but before they could teleport back, their mutual desire reignited. They shared another heated kiss, their bodies pressed close together, the warmth of their love and longing enveloping them. Vasper's hands roamed over her back, and Chanty felt the intensity of his need matching her own. She slipped the straps of her dress down once more, but Vasper gently stopped her, his touch both tender and firm. Chanty, he whispered against her lips, it's torture seeing you like this. You drive me wild. He took a deep breath, his eyes filled with a mix of desire and frustration. Next time, please don't wear something so revealing. It makes it harder for us to control ourselves. Chanty laughed softly, the sound mingling with the gentle lapping of the waves. I should be the one saying that to you, she teased, her fingers tracing the lines of his jaw. But I understand. Vasper smiled, his eyes softening with affection. We'll practice restraint, he said, his voice earnest. We need to learn how to kiss without losing ourselves completely. Chanty nodded, her heart swelling with love for him. We'll get better at it, she agreed, her voice filled with determination. They held each other for a few moments longer, savoring the closeness, before Vasper lifted her into his arms and they teleported back to Jake's mansion. The cool night air was replaced by the warmth of the interior, and Chanty felt a sense of comfort as Vasper set her gently on her feet. I'll see you when the moon is full, Vasper promised, his eyes locking onto hers. Stay safe, Chanty. You too, Vasper, she replied, her voice soft but steady. With one last lingering kiss, Vasper vanished, leaving Chanty standing alone in her room. She took a deep breath, her mind swirling with thoughts of their love and the challenges they faced. She showered and changed into dry clothes, her body still tingling from Vasper's touch, and lay down on her bed, her heart filled with a mix of longing and determination. Jake arrived in the living room, having teleported there. He caught everyone eating, so they invited him to join them. As they ate, Jake spoke briefly about the meeting Chanty needed to attend with the investors. He asked her how she felt about it, reassuring her that David would not leave her to face it alone. David had already prepared everything, including the meeting venue and the dinner arrangements at his hotel in the city. The meetings would take place at Chanty's vineyard because of its beautiful view. Jake kept his feelings for Chanty a secret. He knew it was forbidden by their protocol, and besides, Chanty loved Vasper. Even though Vasper was their mortal enemy, he had shown his willingness to protect Chanty from his father. This mutual understanding allowed them to coexist, but it pained Jake to know that Chanty's heart belonged to Vasper. Like Jacob, he loved Chanty and shared the same heartache. The more he tried to avoid her, the stronger his feelings grew. Suppressing his emotions was the hardest thing for Jake. He was at war with his own heart, which felt like torture. Every time he saw Chanty, he longed to hold and kiss her, but those dreams only played out in his imagination. Their mission was clear: protect Chanty from the Mondragons until she completed her mission. However, Jake worried about something Lewis had mentioned. Lewis had sensed Vasper's presence at the mansion twice in the past few nights, although it had been fleeting. Their last encounter with Vasper had resulted in an agreement: Vasper would avoid Chanty unless her life was in immediate danger. Vasper had agreed to this setup, but it didn't ease Jake's mind. Chanty, unaware of Jake's internal struggle, focused on preparing for the upcoming meetings. She set her alarm and woke up early, feeling the excitement of the previous night's encounter with Vasper. She couldn't believe how wild she had been with him, but she didn't care. As she walked into the living room, she found Lorena arranging the sofa while an automatic vacuum moved around the floor and dining area. Lorena greeted her and immediately started making coffee. Chanty heard sounds from the kitchen and peeked in to see Marco and Justin cooking. They smiled at her as she carried her coffee into the kitchen. "Good morning, Chanty," Justin said, wearing an apron, as did Marco. Chanty smiled back. "Can I help with anything?" "We're almost done, Chanty," Justin replied. "Just need to cook the eggs." She was glad that the awkwardness between them had eased, due to David's rule about avoiding unnecessary conversation with her. As she sipped her coffee and watched them, she said, "Maybe we can eat together since David isn't here." The two men exchanged glances and then smiled. "Why not?" "Sure," Marco said. "To be honest, Chanty, we don't like David's rule either, but we have to follow it. He makes all the decisions in this family." Justin added, "We're sorry if it seemed like we were avoiding you. David just doesn't want us to get too close, like Jacob did." Chanty nodded. "I understand. Don't worry about it." They chatted for a few minutes until the food was ready. Chanty helped set the table, and Lorena called Gabriel and Louis from the garden. When they saw Chanty, they smiled as well. "Looks like we can eat together today," Gabriel said, laughing. "David won't mind." "Just make sure Lorena doesn't tell," Louis joked. "Don't worry about me," Lorena replied with a laugh. "I'm always on your side." They all laughed and enjoyed their meal together, with Chanty as the center of their conversation. They admired how quickly she had learned to handle a sword, thanks to Louis's teaching. "You should spar with Jacob," Chanty, Marco suggested. I'd love to see that. The mention of Jacob's name brought an awkward silence to the group. Oops, Marco said, realizing his mistake. It's okay, Chanty said softly, breaking the silence. I've forgiven Jacob. Don't worry about it. She looked each of them in the eye, conveying her sincerity. They responded with smiles, appreciating her understanding. The meal continued with light-hearted conversation, but Jake remained quietly introspective. Jake's thoughts wandered back to the previous day. He had seen Chanty practicing by herself. Jake's feelings for Chanty were a constant source of inner turmoil. He was bound by duty and protocol, and his love for her was a forbidden burden. After breakfast, Chanty and Lorena went to her room to prepare for the day. Lorena helped her pack and chose a suitable outfit for the meeting with the investors, advising her not to wear it until they reached the city. You have a day before all the investors arrive, Lorena reminded her. Use this time to prepare and relax. Chanty nodded, feeling the weight of the upcoming responsibilities. She needed to face the business her father left behind, with David and the family lawyer by her side. She was nervous but determined. As a child, she had accompanied her father to meetings, so she knew many of the investors. However, there were still some she had never met, especially those from other countries. Jake knocked on her door, breaking her thoughts. Ready to go? He asked with a gentle smile. Almost, she replied. Just gathering my thoughts. You'll do great, Chanty, Jake assured her. David has everything planned, including the venue at your vineyard. The investors will appreciate the beauty of the place. Chanty smiled, appreciating his support. Thanks, Jake. I just hope I can live up to everyone's expectations. You will, Jake said, his eyes soft with unspoken emotion. Remember, we're all here for you. She nodded, feeling a mixture of gratitude and she's ready to face the day's challenges. Jake, Chanty, and Lorena teleported to David's villa in the city, using Jake's teleportation power. Upon arrival, Chanty and Lorena felt dizzy and nauseous, struggling to keep their balance. Both started vomiting almost immediately. Samuel, David's personal assistant, greeted them at the door, offering tissues and water. He helped Lorena while Jake supported Chanty, guiding her to the sofa in the living room. Chanty looked around, taking in the villa's luxurious, modern design. It was a stark contrast to his forest villa, which had a touch of royalty and antiquity. In her thoughts, she couldn't help but note the wealth and sophistication of David's family. Samuel engaged them in small talk, updating them on David's whereabouts. David isn't back yet, he explained. He's still handling some business matters. He might not return until late tonight. Chanty and the others understood, nodding in acknowledgement. After a few minutes, Chanty and Lorena started feeling better. Lorena gathered Chanty's belongings and led her to the guest room to rest. Jake headed to his own guest room as well. Chanty was mesmerized by the beauty of her room. She stood in awe, admiring the exquisite interior design and the elegant furnishings. The room's decor was a perfect blend of comfort and opulence, making her feel both at home and incredibly out of place at the same time. As she settled in, her mind wandered to the events that lay ahead. She needed to prepare for the meeting with the investors, which would be held at her vineyard. The reality of the responsibilities she was about to face weighed heavily on her, but she found comfort in knowing she wasn't alone. Jake, David, and the rest of the team were there to support her. The day's journey had been exhausting, and Chanty felt the need to relax and gather her thoughts. She lay on the bed, staring at the intricately designed ceiling, allowing the calmness of the room to soothe her nerves. The soft, plush bedding and the gentle hum of the air conditioner provided a much-needed respite from the day's stresses. As she closed her eyes, the image of Vasper's face appeared in her mind, bringing a small, wistful smile to her lips. Despite the chaos and uncertainty of her life, the thought of him brought her a sense of peace and warmth. She allowed herself a moment to relish in that feeling before the responsibilities of the following day would pull her back into reality.